Hey, welcome back everyone to the Black Brain Trust. This is episode 122, Space and Technology. I'm with my co-facilitator, Lionel.
Hello, how's everyone doing tonight? How you doing today, Mike?
I'm doing good, brother. Yourself?
I am well. Thanks for asking.
All right. So, for those of you who want to follow along, the docket is in the description beneath the video, and we will get started. Please hit the like button as you come in, and share this video with others that you feel will appreciate it. All right. So, first video on the docket, first item on the docket is from National Geographic, City of the Future, Singapore. Now, I meant to post this about a few weeks ago. I came across it, but I couldn't fit it on the docket. We had so many other things on the docket that we wanted to cover. But I figured we start the new year off with this. This item, to me, is literally a Wakanda, as we've seen in Black Panther. They pretty much hit all of the check boxes of what you would want from a smart city. And I just think that if you haven't seen this video before, this documentary before, you should actually sit down and watch it after the hangout. It's phenomenal. I know. Do you have anything you want to add to this? Okay, so I know is away right now, but
Oh, my bad. Apologize. I saw this. It was a nice. The city looks beautiful. I want to point that out. For those who don't know, Singapore is a city state. It's a small little. Um, um, the city looks is beautiful, miraculous. They have their iconic building with the I think it's the boat or ship on top of the buildings. I think that's what it is. Oops, press the wrong button here. Um, the things they were talking about in the video of how they want to plan out the city for the next 50 years and what they're doing is commemorable. A few things that stood out to me was how she is a she's a city planner. She said she has a master's degree in planning. But what she pointed out was they computer simulated because Singapore is right off the ocean, and they computer simulated the breeze that's coming off the oceans. And so she says she and her team wanted to keep to have the breeze come through um, Singapore. They wanted to keep that aspect of the natural environment. So they designed the cities in a way that's not the cities, the buildings, where they will be turned a certain way that will allow the breeze to come through. So therefore, there's no stagnation of the air. When it's hot outside, Singapore is in a tropical region. It doesn't seem as hot bouncing off the concrete, the asphalt, making it 1 to 2 degrees hotter. So you have that nice, cool breeze off the air, and they designed their buildings to be turned that way. Um, that I thought that was pretty nice. I don't know if you had any points on that part.
no, you're right. That's actually a very ingenious design. A lot of cities that you in the United States, they just throw buildings up like it's there is no responsibility for environmental environmental thought.
Concerns.
Not so much as concerns, but environmental um, regulation or anything like that. There's no building standards in the United States. People just put whoever has the money to put it up, they just put it up.
I see what you're saying.
There's no regards for
Yeah.
anything of that. So in the United States, we don't have that, right? So even in places like Minnesota, the buildings are connected, so people, so to prevent people from being cold and things like that. But that's like the most concern they may have. But when you deal with a tropical area like Singapore, I mean they taking everything into consideration.
Hmm. And that's good. That's actually good because A, it helps the environment and the people that lives there, or that live there.
Hmm.
And then the other part of land reclamation, I think that's the term we use, where they,
Hmm.
much like Dubai, how they built up these man-made islands. They built up their man-made islands
Hmm.
to build more out, to have more space. The guy, I don't remember his name, but he's also a city planner. He said, these office buildings, they're only being used Monday through Friday between 9 and 5 mainly. So if you build this area, which obviously you want to build in a nice area overlooking the ocean and so forth, they have limited use, much like a football stadium or a sports stadium in America. So what he did was have um, he built around them these parks and or the walkways where the citizens can just is dual use is what I'm trying to say. Not only
Yep.
is this area buildings, but there's other uses to it.
Hmm.
Were you gonna say something?
No, they would. I was just gonna touch on some of the points I've taken out from the article. One of the key points that I found in the video was that their motto is to innovate or die,
Mm-hmm.
and that's something that sticks with me because I think that for Black people, they don't actually take that into consideration at all. They think that the way things are is just the way it's always going to be, and there's always going to be some form of external third party. Uh, government assistance that's going to help me survive. No, if you do not innovate, you will die. That's their model.
And it's funny you say that because again, that is their model. And I heard him say that one of the people they interviewed said that the reason they have that model is because they have no resources on the same level of other countries.
Hmm.
So they have to innovate or die.
Hmm.
And I see something. If you go to the 7 minute and 18 second mark, there's something that is on the right side of the screen. It looks like a soccer field that's built out into this little lake area. You see right
Yeah,
to the right side.
yeah,
That's nice. You playing soccer and it's you surrounded by water. That's nice right there.
yeah. It's a floating field.
Yeah. That Imagine you hit that somewhere in the thickest of Africa, and these people playing soccer.
Hmm.
Man, that would look so beautiful.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's go ahead.
yeah. They 40 years ago it didn't look anything like that.
Yeah.
So now you have all this infrastructure in place in 4 decades. You think about what happened in 4 decades with Black people. You went from civil rights you know to what you have right
I'm a
now,
strong
whatever it
black
is that you
woman.
have right now.
Yeah.
That's
Civil
all you
rights.
have.
I'm a strong black woman.
Right, you have nothing of
Right.
no, you have nothing noteworthy to really write of. Whereas, these people I refer to Singaporeans, um, who I also noticed in the video, also have diversity in leadership. So it's not all Singaporeans in leadership. There's a lot of non-Asian people who are actually
Now,
doing a lot of the changes and development here.
to the first point you said, yes, that's sad in our community. That's actually sad where we go from civil rights to oh, I'm a strong black woman and all this other crap. That's sad. And in the same span, there are countries that have cast the yoke of imperialism and colonialism off their shoulders and built mega cities, the futures of the city. And you say they have your other point, they have divership. Singapore have a lot of Asians, a lot of Indians, people that live around that area where Singapore is. They all seemingly uh, go to Singapore and they live there. So it's a lot of different type of Asians that live in that area.
Hmm.
And then they have these buildings that have green terraces. Their rooftops have um, this as one good view at the 8 minute 54 second. The Park Royal, I think that's sound like a hotel, but the buildings are built on top of these levels. It's just green walkways. That looks beautiful. Trees on top of on top of buildings. So it just looks green everywhere.
Hmm. Hmm. One of the other things that I noted was that they're, as we're seeing in the video right now, they're testing out an idea to use drones to lift people,
Hmm.
um, and replace their postal service as well. So same way you have a mailbox outside of your house to pick up your mail, they thinking about using these drones to actually deliver your mail to you. And they also thinking about using drones to lift people up from one perspective,
Yeah,
from one area, to the next, to their high rises, because everything's going to be built vertically and not wide.
and those drones are huge. Those not no little drones you get from your local
Amazon.
store. Right. Those drones are huge and they're able to carry. The guy said they figured out that the average package weight is 40 kilograms or 88 pounds. So they're able to carry that and deliver it to a location. You go pick it up.
Right,
Those are some huge.
there's a whole mechanism
Hmm.
behind it.
Those are some huge drones. Um, it was something else they pointed. It was a bunch more, a couple more things they pointed out. They have the water desalination. Um, they said they currently import half their fresh water. Wow. They import water, but this next point that's coming up, the agriculture of how they're planning to have these agricultural farms, these horizontal, not horizontal, vertical agricultural farms dotted out around the city to to
Vertical farms.
yeah, vertical farms to lessen that import of fresh vegetables from the surrounding countries.
Hmm.
They want to be self-sustainable.
Yeah, I think that's a noble cause. Something that can actually be done here.
Hmm. Now, the guy he said that they figured out instead of using GMO and these other techniques to manipulate the plants and vegetables to do what you want, what he
Hmm.
said was they use different ways of light, or they play with different waves of light, different temperatures to get to manipulate the in this and what he was talking about the kale to, not to be bitter but to be more sweet because Singaporeans like more sweet tish food there opposed to more bitter food. So instead of like I said, instead of use GMO, they're manipulating the plants in a different way that I feel isn't messing with its genetic makeup.
Right, right, um, right. They're 3D printing the fruit, so they are based on the conditions of a person, right? So they have these Fitbit type of wrist devices like a smartwatch, and it's
Hmm.
calculating all of your body conditions in the environment, and then it's determining what kind of food needs to be prepared for you through a 3D printer that's actually edible. Um, but I thought that was a really ingenious sort of idea.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, she was working with someone to build that watch, and she was saying because of the elderly, they may not get all the nutrients. But now that you mentioned, then I hear you talking about it. Imagine this: you will The system sees that there's a cold front coming, and it knows, well, people get sick around this time of year, with the rainy season coming ahead. It'll 3D print out food that's heavy in vitamin C or other vitamins and minerals that will boost your immune system up ahead of that rainy season.
Hmm.
Wow.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow. That's pretty cool. That is pretty cool.
Yeah, the other notable item I found was using blockchain to protect all of their financial data. Um,
Mm-hmm.
we haven't even gotten to that point here in the United States at all. We're way behind. We can't even get regulation established, a framework established, and yet they've already done it.
Yeah. Yeah. Instead of all the bureaucracy saying, well, we don't know. Da, da, da. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and what you're looking at in the video right now is the vertical farm being built from the ground up, multiple stories. So thought that's I don't even know how many stories that is, like 10 or 12 or something like that.
Yeah. And that's a lot of food that's being grown to feed a lot of people, and also introduce um, fruit that's not normally grown in that area.
But and they don't use
Yeah.
soil. They don't use soil. So
Say again.
they don't use soil.
Oh, mm. And a water desalination plant. Uh, it said that, like I mentioned earlier, they import a lot of their fresh water. They have freshwater reservoirs around the country, like 17 or so, but that's not enough. They still have to import fresh water, make themselves more sustainable. They started to desalinate seawater, and they're sucking in seawater into this plant that's off the coast, and they're running the water through these tubes to get rid of the salt. Now that takes a lot of energy. The example that they gave in the video, to I don't know how much water it would this is, but it'll power a household for 1,000 years or so. Singaporean household for 1,000 years. That's a lot of energy. So
Hmm.
what they're doing is they are attaching these electrodes to, I guess, the tubing, and how the salt attract itself to the negative, and the water attaches itself to the positive side, and they'll do that over a number of times until the water is totally desalinated, free of salt, and that requires a lot less energy.
Hmm.
So they put in the work. They're putting in the work.
Yeah. One of the other notable items I thought was really interesting was the tech incubators that they have. This is something that we saw in the video on Saturday for Africa, the Digital Africa Movement, where the government funds these startups, and these startups are actually working on behalf of the government. So they're solving problems for the government and providing these solutions, and the government is paying for it. That sort of social enterprise is exactly what Black people need in America in order to actually prosper. But the problem is, I don't want to get into it right now, but you see a lot of videos on here talking about things that are not really essential for that sort of
Yeah.
cultural development. So we're the only channel on YouTube in the manosphere actually having these conversations. I want to make that clear. Um,
Yes.
the other noble item that was on my list was they offer tech clinics, tech
Mm-hmm.
clinics for everybody. There's some feedback
Mm-hmm.
coming from you.
I have feedback.
Yes. Yeah, so they use these tech clinics to actually keep their people abreast on technological developments. so that there's no digital literacy gap. United States, we call it digital divide. So they're correcting their problems by investing into their people, even into the senior citizens. So even you see, senior citizens have smartphones. My
Yeah.
White Israel, hey, what's going on? C Boogie Productions, what's going on? Um, yeah, they have all these water catching catchments for catching collecting all that rainwater. Because of all the water that they do use, I think they use something like 2 billion liters a day, which is a lot, especially for a country that doesn't produce its own water, doesn't have its own rivers.
And on top of that, the environment that they're doing it all this all in is still a beautiful environment. It's still geared toward green, clean. I think they mentioned in the video that what was it? I'm trying to paraphrase. I'm trying to remember, but he basically said to have innovation, you need that clear mind and that environment tailored to having a clear mind to innovate continuously into the future.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. That's something that I've learned when I was younger. So even they teach the kids. If you haven't got a chance to look at the video at the end, they start teaching their kids STEM before they even get into grade school. So by the time they are in daycare, not daycare, but Head Start, their Head Start, they're already teaching them STEM, the very early versions of STEM, but it's still the building blocks of it. So instead of uh, kids learning how to see and say and you know recite their ABCs, they're really in there working with robots and coding, the very pillars of coding. So
Yeah, yeah, and they that's like where hey, we're gonna make sure that our country continue to innovate past the 50 years that they planned on to past the 50-year plan. They're going to
mhm.
continue to innovate beyond that by teaching the children, by making sure the children are enrolled in these type of classes to make that, as you say, that complex thought, have those conversations.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, and they don't go into it right here, but their military is top notch. I would say I think it's in the top 20 in the world. Um, even
Really?
yeah, it's in the top 20. Their military is very advanced. It's very automated. If that makes any sense, it's one person can do multiple things, and one device does multiple things. So they don't just have a tank. The tank actually does more than just be a tank. It's not just a main battle tank. It does other things like surface to air missiles and uh, other like it could take out warships if it needs to. Different types of ammunition. They're very very strategic and high design military.
I did not know that. Now I know.
Yeah, we'll probably do a hangout on that on probably on Wednesday, like on geopolitics. We'll probably look at their military. Well, what I find interesting too is that you don't see too many cars around. A lot of streets, but you don't see too many cars in the video. I mean, there's highways and stuff like that, but uh, people for the most part are just walking.
Yeah, now that you mentioned it, I did see that. And one of the people they interviewed said that. He said, yeah, well, what we're planning to do in the future, we understand that driving is going to be a problem. They specifically didn't say how they're going to tackle that, but They did mention it. Hmm.
But yeah, I think we covered most of it. I don't see any items on my list that we missed, but for the most part, um, they built 1 million apartments in I think like a couple of years or something like that. That's something that hasn't been done in the United States to my knowledge. I mean, you still have a lot of mass homelessness in most major cities, especially Chicago.
Right. Now, do you think they're able to tackle these problems because they're such a small, let's say, country, city state? It's
Say that
easier
one
for
more
them,
time.
huh?
Say that one more time.
Do you think they're able to tackle these social problems because they are a small city state and not a massive country?
There's a lack of bureaucracy involved, but there's more. There's the bureaucracy is what's driving it, but the bureaucracy isn't what's holding it back, and then you don't have a culture of slavery either.
I got you. I got you.
Whereas in the United States, they have such a nasty past that it's hard for them to actually reconcile with the people on the ground because those people on the ground are a byproduct of what you did, 100 years ago. So you can only go so far back in your history to if you're a pale faced person, you can only go so far back in your history before you realize you were or you have benefited from the people that you're now coming to help or need to help for that matter. The whole purpose of government, especially big government, is to solve problems for the people on the ground. And in the United States, that's not happening. So um, you do have these social gaps in place, and unfortunately, um, we don't have anywhere in the United States that looks anything like this.
Okay, I got you.
All right, we'll go to the next article. All right, this one is from the BostonGlobe.com. This Western Mass town rejected Comcast and decided to build its own broadband network. The public library here, in a wing of a sturdy brick town hall of Route 2, isn't necessarily the best spot for quiet study. It's one of the few places in this small town nestled in the northwest corner of the state where residents can reliably get high-speed internet access. So when you, so when the library is open, parts of 3 days a week, patrons are, excuse me, patrons are likely to be immersed in a teleconference or stream a movie as they are in a good book. Quote, people are coming for all of the reasons that people use the internet, said library director Andrea Bernard, who said she doesn't mind a little noise given the circumstances. I just want everybody to be able to get the resources they need. Like many of the small hill towns in the region, um, Charlotte has been waiting for years for reliable internet access, stuck in an antiquated system of dial-up and DSL that makes it hard to work remotely, buy stuff online, and access government services that require online filings. After a generation of hopping, hoping someone would build a broadband network to serve Char- Charlemagne's farthest flung corners, the community of about 1,100 people got an offer this year that might have been an answer to their prayers. Comcast, in exchange for subsidy from the state and local governments, was willing to build connections to nearly all of the town's homes. Instead, residents handed the communications giant a collective no thank you. At a special town meeting on December 6th, they voted to build their own $1.5 million broadband network at, at an added cost of nearly $1 million over Comcast. Charlotte is one of the several municipalities in Western Massachusetts puzzling over how to ensure that decisions about connectivity stay in local hands. Some residents are wary of trusting a big company to make decisions about such a crucial service. Quote, I like the idea that it will be owned by the town. It's something that the town should be proud of, said Trevor Mackey, member of Charlemagne's broadband committee, which has been examining the puzzle of how to network the town for several years. If something goes wrong with the town built system, he said, you can talk to a person. You don't have to talk to a corporation. Push one for this, push two for that. But for the town's decision to hire a contractor to build out its system did not come easily, largely because of the upfront cost. That's what has Karen Hognes, a resident who voted in favor of the municipal network, still feeling uneasy. Quote, I have some problems with Comcast, she said, citing concerns including the company's pricing and customer service, but I also have some problems with my decision. Other small towns have found themselves torn along similar lines amid a years long effort by the state to expand broadband to remote, sparsely populated areas that aren't attractive to service providers. The Massachusetts Broadband Institute was launched in 2008 when Governor Deval Patrick, a black man, cobbled together money from the state offers and recession era federal stimulus program to pay for the major infrastructure effort. One big step was $90 million construction of a broadband line to connect 123 municipalities in the central and western parts of the state. Next, the state encouraged them to arrange last mile connections from the main line directly into the homes. I don't want to read too much of this because it's a very interesting article because it's all about the do-it-yourself techie thing. But for the most part, they were able to bring broadband to themselves at a very small cost. So, Lino, did you read this?
Yeah, I read it. I did not know there's still parts of the country that are still on dial-up and I think they said DSL. Did they say DSL and dial-up?
Yeah, 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 DSL.
Wow, and especially in Massachusetts. That's would thought it would be in or North or South Dakota, but in Massachusetts, wow.
Yeah, it's hard to so it's hard for people to understand, but Massachusetts, we have fiber on the main highways, so your expressways and not the expressways, the pike, what we call the turnpike, that connects Boston to New York. Um, that that part of the highway is actually structured for fiber, but once you get off of that highway, when you go into those places like in this article, you know, 10, 15, 20 miles, there is no connection from there. So you have to pipe all that stuff yourself, or you're gonna have to have a service provider like Comcast or Verizon come in and do it, and they're gonna charge you exuberant prices. And that's why they decided they were gonna build their own broadband.
All right, now question.
Yes.
They're building their own broadband, so they have more control uh, over it in general. Um, what are some of the advantages of owning your own broadband?
The advantages of owning the broadband is more about the infrastructure. So you're not, you don't have big government, not big government, but big corporation coming in and actually determining the usage of that infrastructure. Um, Once you have your own infrastructure, then it kind of belongs to you, and you can kind of um, you can better manage it. It's not so much that it's better than Comcast. It's the ownership aspect of it. It falls within your budget. That way, you can raise taxes as well because it now belongs to you. Because most of this stuff the way you pay for it um, is through property tax. So if you're already paying property taxes, why should you let somebody else come in and install the very thing that you're already paying taxes for? That doesn't make any sense. Especially and have them charge you back. That doesn't make any sense.
Okay, so in this county, because obviously county paying your taxes in this municipal affords you internet connection and amongst other things. Now that is nice. That is nice.
Hmm. Yeah, you could do the same thing in other parts of the country too. It's just about how many endpoints, which would be houses, do you have, and what are the needs of those those areas? Are they farms? Are they urban houses? Residential, commercial property? You know, all of those things take into consideration. So um, it all can be done though for a very small price. Now we talked about this, I think, over the weekend. I know the city of Cambridge, they well, not city of Cambridge, city of Boston, they were talking about $180 million to lay down fiber. Now that's a lot of money. That's a lot of money for residential infrastructure because they talked about owning the infrastructure in the same way they talked about in this article in Western Massachusetts. So there's a desire for people to own infrastructure in the same way you pay for a library that is so it's a structure, it's a public structure. You also want they also want to own the fiber as well and make that part of the public infrastructure. And if you can do that, then you can kind of keep the monopolies out, like Comcast, Verizon, and RCN, and all these other companies.
And they would put the ownership of the ownership of the rights with the people that live in that municipality. And on the other side of that coin, they will put the onus for them to keep up their infrastructure.
Yeah, absolutely. Plus, you get to do what you want with it. It is broadband or internet is considered to be a utility now. So if if your broadband goes down, then what happens here is um, you your business can go offline, hospitals can go offline, things like that. All your major institutions are reliant on this broadband or this internet infrastructure. So if the infrastructure is going to be provided to the people, then it should be owned by the people too. And in the same way
Mm,
that you have the library, well, then what happens if the library needs any new books or repairs? Well, that comes out of your tax dollars anyways. You can actually have more democracy with public infrastructure than you would with private infrastructure.
okay, okay. And then you mentioned that the article did point out when that time they were able to select what computers and software they wanted instead of selecting what Comcast gave them. They were able to select the more advanced ones.
Hmm.
That's pretty cool. And there's a paragraph in this article that made me snicker. I'm gonna read it verbatim. It said, in urban areas where internet connections are seemingly unlimited, people are looking for ways to spend less time online. Then it says, disconnecting from the barrage of notifications that clutter our days and the social media arguments that can decay our civic lives. The social media arguments that can decay our civic lives.
Hmm.
So that made me laugh when they put that in there
Yeah.
because
Mhm.
yeah, no, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say maybe they frequent the black YouTube or something, but
Yeah.
um, that's typically how it should be done. If it was more done like that, then you would see more cost efficient rates for broadband, whether it's Comcast or Verizon. In comparison to Comcast and Verizon, you would have more a cheaper cost, a cheaper flat rate because it's already been bundled into your infrastructure, right? So it's just a matter of, okay, well, do you have a router at home? Well, yeah. Well, go to Best Buy and go buy your router then.
hmm and the article hit on that point too. They were saying the more people sign up for this, um, it'll be the prices would be competitive to Comcast, and the more people that sign up, it'll start out to be cheaper than Comcast. What
Yeah.
Comcast can offer you.
Yeah,
and
because mhm.
you may not be you may not box continuously that $5 per month for like a lifetime charge that
Yeah.
Comcast charging.
Right, right. And Comcast adds a lot of taxation to your bill. If you ever get a chance to look at your bill, you see how many taxes you're accruing and paying and things like that. You know, pieces of you know, little things that you just don't, realize why is my bill so high? Well, if you actually read your bill, you would see why. You know, when you check out a library book, you just check out the library book and you bring it back on time, you're good. As long as you're not delinquent, you don't have to pay any accrued debt to the library itself, right? So if you take that into consideration for broadband, then you're going to get a whole lot of utilization out of it. Anyways, let's move on to the next article.
Hmm.
I found this next one a Microsoft site, but it was recent, and it was about similar to what we talked about in the previous article, but utilizing white space, analog white space technology to provide internet access into rural areas. Again, people taking matters into their own hands in terms of public infrastructure. What Microsoft was able to do was they was able to help provide the antenna infrastructure and as well as the network infrastructure for the town. You have anything you want to add to this, Leno?
Yeah, how the video is interesting. How the came up with the notion of having your own internet to begin with. They the they took it into their own hands, and now she's saying, like you just mentioned, using the old TV signals to broadcast your internet. That's yeah, everything you just mentioned. Hey, go ahead and do it. If it's there, if the infrastructure is already there, and you can build on top of it, repurpose it, go ahead and do it.
Hmm.
Yeah, but then again, people have to have that want, and know it. But they're doing it, and good for them.
Yeah, absolutely. This is it's I don't want to get too much detail into it, but there's so many ways you can go about this because I'm obviously an IT person, but this is really good stuff, really really good stuff, and it's really cost efficient. It probably costs less to do this than what the last article was quoted, like 1.5 $2 million.
Wow,
You can probably do this for maybe about 25 grand.
really? So the equipment, people purchasing the equipment, or like the town purchasing the equipment to dole it out?
Labor, I mean, I'm including labor into this.
Okay,
Yeah, I'm including
okay,
labor into that.
okay.
So your antennas and stuff like that, that's probably going to cost you a couple of $1,000s. You're going to need ladders to erect it, wiring that needs to be fished out and done, your network switches that need to be routed or need to be stood up, and all weather infrastructure, um, protected from rain and things like that. Um, make sure it's weatherproof. And then you factor in um, piloting, testing, and things like that. So I believe you could do the same thing in most areas because that analog white space is actually available on the auction block.
Yeah, I remember we talked about that. Show about the white space.
Hmm. See, Boogie has a question. He said, "What's the maintenance cost?" The maintenance cost is usually is very minimal. So you're looking at like wind damage, um, erosion. That's about it. But when you plan out, you kind of plan that stuff out ahead of time. So it's all bundled into your infrastructure costs as you design out. This is just a rough estimate. I don't know what exactly they spent on it, but you can do something like this for very dirt cheap. An access panel in a antenna pole is probably less than $500, and that can go probably a mile with enough power in it. So if you put like 2 or 3 watts into that thing can shoot a mile easy. And it's only in this video they're only talking about 250 people in the village. I think one of these days on one of these hangouts we'll cover the we'll go over something like this, like an analog white space broadband public infrastructure setup. Look at the cost. All right, next article is from Forbes.com. 18 wheelers at high speed at app speed. An $800 million startup is trying to pull an Uber on the trucking business. At 12, Drew McElroy was in the trucking. All right. At 12, Drew McElroy was in trucking. His parents ran a freight brokerage operation out of a spare bedroom in Milltown, New Jersey, connecting the truck owners to companies that needed to move goods. And he helped out by working the phones. 15 years later, a light bulb went off. Weren't truck brokers doing the same thing that Uber and Lyft do? They match rides to vehicles, minimizing wasted miles, and use algorithms to set prices based on supply and demand. I realized, holy crap, no one is doing this, McElroy says. There's a clear path to changing this entire industry that isn't that complicated, quote. It was a smart idea. Trucking is a $700 billion market, and the bill for moving full truckloads in the U.S. runs more than $500 billion a year. In 2013, 4 years after that aha moment, McElroy co-founded Transfix, an online freight marketplace that uses algorithms and machine learning to give full load shippers better prices and truck owners better routes. The timing was good. Truckers, largely middle-aged men, had recently begun carrying smartphones and were willing to install the Transfix app. Some shippers, companies that need to move stuff, have their own fleets of trucks driven by their employees. Walmart is one, but there are several exceptions. Most trucking is done by contractors, and the vast majority of that by small operators who are desperate to keep their rigs full to cover financing of those trucks. Transfix, based in New York City's Garment District, is on track to collect $100 million in shipping charges for 2018. It will remit the lion's share of this growth revenue to people who own the vehicles. With venture funding of $78 million from such firms as New Enterprise Associates and Canvas Ventures, the 140 employee business is worth roughly $800 million, gaining its spot on Forbes 2018 list of next billion-dollar startups. One of two trucking companies to make the cut. McElroy, the company's chief executive, and his co-founder Jonathan Salama, yeah, its chief technology officer, but have stakes that are probably worth $50 million each. McElroy believes the company can reach $1 billion in revenue with double-digit operating margins by 2021, helping customers like Anheuser-Busch and Unilever manage their logistics while also enabling truckers to make more money by reducing their time they travel empty. What do you think about this, Lionel?
He's right. he couldn't believe that no one's already was doing this. No one already, and he took control and did it. We've always mentioned how autonomous vehicles can disrupt the trucking industry. Now, the Uber, the Uber of the trucking, the Uber plan may disrupt it. He already mentioned how with his business plan, it can save, it can make their trips more efficient. No more driving around with half empty trucks, losing money because of the price to ship these goods. He stated, he mentioned how excuse me, the brokers that match truckers to deliveries, they may overcharge them and so forth. But this is pretty nice. I gotta meet myself. Hey, how you doing, Brain?
Yeah, this is a game changer. I hadn't thought about this, at least not in that fashion. I always thought that most retailers use their own employees for shipping goods, but apparently, I guess there's still some contracting to be had. So it's always interesting to see something like this develop.
Buenos.
What's going on, Preem?
Hola. ¿Cómo está?
Bien, bien.
Ah.
Well, what's up with this article? You have anything you want to add to it?
Yeah, yeah, this is what pulled me out of the back cave. I was listening in. But yeah, I mean, hey, shout out to that guy doing like same thing that Uber does or Google does. They, fill supply demand and they or Airbnb, same whole model and can't really knock him, for using technology to make it more efficient than what traditional brokers are probably, doing these days. Because I'm guessing that's the way he pretty much is able to cut down on costs. Is whatever algorithm, whatever thing he's doing, is able to locate the right people at the right times, the right loads, and pair them more efficiently than what's currently being done. Um, it sucks for the brokers. I think the truck drivers really were never, they were always subcontractors, so it really is not too bad for them. But essentially, this guy is going to be their new employer. But again, they were already being employed or subcontracting out for all the multiple companies that they were doing their hauls for. And something they try to do something similar in the home. Well, they may have already done it, but I kind of I snubbed it away in the home services company to where roofers, plumbers, cleaners, lawn and lawn and maintenance folks just try to be like, okay, sign up for our platform. We're going to get you customers. And they go out there into the market and, advertise the bejesus out of their platform or out of their software or out of their app to get customers to come on there. And then they pair them with, okay, we've got this plumber's, this electrician is within 5 miles of you. Here's his picture. Here's his this. Here's his that. Or this carpet cleaner is within 2 miles from you. He's available. We can route him there right now. But the problem that I saw with that, and what I advised to some of the guys I was consulting for, is that you're going to end up you're commoditizing yourself. And in the home services industry, a lot of times is a lot of the owners are just technicians that decided they didn't want to work for nobody else, and they really don't establish like a model. But I'm like, if you do this, it's going to lead to price suppression because you're essentially going to be competing against the next guy based on price, and it's going to kill your margins. You're going to be working for somebody else, and you're going to be commoditizing, the hell out of yourself. And the blue collar services, trucking, kind of thought, well, this tech thing, there's no way these guys can impede on what we do and this and that. But nah. I mean, they definitely are coming. And that's why I told a lot of guys is you're going to have to either level up your client base to where they don't go to apps like these to just get, okay, who's available to where there's another criteria that they're going to look at and be more discriminating as far as who they hire. Is this guy, is this trucker, does he have experience in hauling this, that, and the other? But I'm sure this kid already has all that stuff in his algorithm. Is gonna, give the folks who have freight the choice to select from a few different options. Have guys' resumes and their driving records and their insurance and and all that good stuff in there. Um, but yeah, man, again, shout out to the kid. And it really sucks for, anybody, contractor, small business owner who just kind of thought things were going to be the same and that technology wouldn't, these guys wouldn't find a way to impede, in the blue collar, sector with the technology and commoditize the hell out of it. Like same thing Amazon does to products, it commoditize, or how Walmart did to, mom and pop that were making things. You're like, shit, we can sell it for more at Ace, but we get more distribution in more places at Walmart, but Walmart, we don't make no margins. Well, it's kind of like, and that's why so many mom and pops went out of business and Walmart gobbing them up. And the same thing's happening here, or is going to happen here.
Yeah, and the same thing with Walmart. Walmart is paying for retail space as well. I think they said, last landlord I spoke to a few months ago, they said they, for 30,000 square feet, they're spending, close to 15 to 20 grand a month in rent.
Whoa! I missed that. I'm not catching that. What happened?
I spoke to a landlord that owns mall space, and they were saying that a lot of companies shut down because they couldn't keep up with the rent because 30,000 plus square feet, runs them anywhere between 15 to 20 grand a month.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
So retailers can't stay open because they can't keep up with the rent. They can't pay the bill.
But gotcha. Yep. And were they saying that was just like because Walmart was driving the prices, the price of the per square foot up, or because they just didn't have the money, they just didn't have the margins, the profit to go ahead and keep up?
They weren't getting enough foot traction. People
Okay.
go on Amazon and they shop from there. So
True. Yeah, man. Yeah.
that happens. That's the nature of the business now. So these guys are cracking 100 million in 2018, and they're projected to even have more. And the company's worth at least 800 million right now on the block. So
this this trucking company thingamajig here.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Yeah. They might end up being the Amazon of the trucking industry. I mean, with this model right here. I mean, obviously they're doing something right. I mean, wow. Damn. Okay. Again,
Yeah,
shout out to the kid.
go ahead.
Oh, I said no. Again, shout out to the kid.
Yeah, I'd love to hear MOT or Ghana Den. Definitely like to hear their opinion on this, man. Because I know they're in the trucking business as well, or the logistics business.
Yeah, and and that's what. Yeah, I know it. And for the sake of sounding like a cornball, that's why I always harp on differentiation. Competitive advantage. Just staying ahead of that, and just being small and nimble has its benefits because you can recreate, reinvent yourself because you gotta stay ahead of the ball. Because if your only thing is like we're here, we exist, and we can do it for X amount, these cats are gonna come with something to make it more efficient, more streamlined supply chain. I think is what it's called, and just and put their bid in, and they're gonna underbid. The guy or the gal who was just used to just, they're gonna pick me because I'm here. And then when the margins start going down, the profits start going down, I could be like, what the hell happened? This, that, and the other. Well, you didn't keep your head on the swivel.
Mm-hmm.
It's competition, man. It's competitive.
Yeah, constantly innovating is key. And those who did not innovate, they died, and those who innovated, they survived. And in this business right here, this is going to be a huge game changer because they have the Google Maps, They have the you know the clientele base. You know, people are signing up. You know, before, you know, like they said in the article, the truckers weren't carrying smartphones like that. You know, I know a lot of truckers who just carry dumb phones, or you know what we call flip phones. They weren't carrying things like that. Now they're carrying that type of stuff, and now you have a whole new ball game.
Yeah, and another quick example, like in the home services industry, there's this these guys, they when they came out with their app 2 years ago called House Call Pro, and they were signing up, the plumbers. First it was going out to plumbers, electricians, and then cleaners. They were signing them up left and right, and they had the GPS in there, they had the tracking in there. The client could get notification on the smartphone, see when you were coming, what street you were on. They had the payment process integrated with it, and
Hmm.
that was their money maker. I was peeping game, and that was how they made, because they had the payment process. They said, "Oh, you can do it all. You can do your scheduling, your invoicing, your lead prospecting, your sales pipeline, and we'll even collect the payment for you, and we'll give you this good rate." And the rate was competitive with what PayPal or Square was charging. But of course, I already know that's where they make their money. They aren't paying market rate. Just like when I was a mortgage broker, the rate that everybody thinks a good interest rate is not the rate that brokers get, and it's damn sure the same rate that banks get. So we may get like a quarter of a point or a half a point on the back end. So I know that they were probably getting just a little bit of fig on that discount rate that they charge for processing credit cards. But this is the thing: they were getting these guys to get their clients to sign up for the app to enable all that. You can see when your technicians come in, you can see his face, you can see this, see that. And I told these mofos, I said, your number one asset is your client. That was the only thing. I mean, everything they had was great, because I was running a stack. I had a Google Calendar for this, sheets for this other thing for this, but they had it all in one. But what turned me away was giving them full access to my client. And then the client has the app. And then now what they do on the back end is they go remarket that client. If that client did cleaning service, they'll remarket plumbing or something else to that client, and then have like a back end model to where they start feeding other guys based on feeding other guys or other companies our cleaning client or our plumbing client, which is what any business owner should do anyway. Is to partner with another person who's not competitive, and you guys share clients. You guys are like, oh no, man. So he's like, dude, you're giving up your number one asset, man. So sometimes there's always, I mean, with that, there was just some shenanigans in there that I saw, and but guys just didn't care, and then they wonder why their calls started going down and down and down, because you're handing these guys all your data. But that's completely separate from this trucking thing. I digress. I apologize. I will mute.
Yeah, it's only a matter of time before this gets integrated into like the infotainment panel of your trucking system, depending on who buys this platform, or who decides to partner with this platform. A lot of your mapping systems in your cars are run by TomTom or Garmin, um, and because of that, you really don't care where the mapping came from, as long as the mapping works. So the same thing is going to happen with this, this app. Is that if it's integrated into the into your infotainment system as a trucker, then it's going to actually be more beneficial for you. So, all right, go to the next video. You'll be kidding me. This one is from New China TV. President Xi Jinping, the president of China, gives his view on scientific innovation, and he has a grand, he has a grand scheme for where he sees the country going in the next 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 80 years. They have ambitions to be the providers of bullet trains, logistics, manufacturing, um, telecommunication, artificial intelligence, as well as space innovation as well. So, Lionel, is there anything you have to add to this?
Yeah, some of the you hit on much almost all the points that you the video talked about.
Hmm.
It shows that China is pushing forward in a lot of their projects. We just talked about Singapore and how Singapore has a 50-year plan. By 2049, the 50-year anniversary of the People's Republic of China, how China wants to be this leader in, like you mentioned, artificial intelligence and other technological um, feats, such as autonomous driving and other technologies. They want to be a leader in the world, and they're pushing. Even though we talk about how they have these tariffs with America and their financial problems, they're still pushing through with their plan. And to me, that is leadership of on a level where, okay, you have these outer problems that are pressing you in your country, but you're still pushing forward with your plan. Uh, I think what was it? What was I think it was deep learning or machine thinking or something like that. Something to do with the
Machine
brain.
learning.
Yeah, machine learning. So, yeah, they are pushing forward. This they're not stopping. And in terms of what they want their country to look like by the 50th anniversary.
Yeah, they're saying by 2049 they want to be the leaders of all of these scientific innovations. So that's what they're
Mm-hmm.
pushing for.
Mm-hmm. Uh, yeah.
That's what you're going up against if you're a black person.
And the excuse me. In the description it says in year one, China gives awards to honor outstanding scientists and research. Um, is the president giving out these awards to these scientists and researchers?
I believe it's the government body that does it.
Okay. Now, do America have something on that level?
They do and they don't. I think it's more on the state level.
Hmm. So with China, and they know they're being recognized by the president of their scientific and research achievements. So it gives them more of a proud incentive to push forward with these projects and research, opposed to America. You, either you do or you don't. That's on you. If you do decide it, then yes, we'll level honor you. Maybe you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, they do give out. So the United States does give out. United States government does give out incentives to companies to innovate. This is how Google and Apple and the rest of these Silicon Valley companies are able to survive by government funding. Google is actually a government-funded operation at first, so you do see things like that. But there's so much cronyism inside the United States that it's hard for non pale faced people to actually get in. So,
Hmm. Okay.
all right, we'll go on to the next article. This one is from CoinTelegraph.com. Consensus and AMD to jointly develop blockchain-based cloud computing infrastructure. Blockchain software company Consensus, a semiconductor producer, AMD, and Abu Dhabi-based investment management firm Halo Holdings are jointly working on blockchain-based cloud computing infrastructure. Consensus announced the collaboration in a press release published on January 4th. Per the release, the companies have partnered to create the so-called web cloud aimed at the development of AMD hardware-based data center products for emerging blockchain workloads. Within the collaboration, Consensus will provide expertise in the field of computing in blockchain transactions, security issues, and use cases for the technology. According to the statement, WebCloud would be the first independent cloud computing blockchain infrastructure to satisfy the requirements for both public and private sector. Director of Product Management and Blockchain Technology at AMD, George Roskowitz, said that the product will be designed to tackle challenges ranging from smart identity, enterprise data centers, and health ID tracking to licensing and supply chain management. Consensus recently signed a memorandum of understanding with South Korean technological holding SK Group in December. The initiative aims at building enterprise blockchain businesses model by using smart contracts. The partnership will also include Ethereum blockchain technology education for Korean developers through a Consensus Academy and SK Holdings TNC's Tech Training Center. In November, AMD partnered with 7 major tech companies to produce 8 new cryptocurrency mining rigs. AMD stressed that the partnership will bring new, quote, blockchain compute solutions to the market designed to meet the various aspirations of innovative blockchain platforms. Additionally, AMD released a video of blockchain explaining the core features of the technology, listing trust, integrity, security as its key advantages. What's your take on this, Lionel?
I won't call consensus a business, but groups, speaking about consensus, in the blockchain area, blockchain / crypto area, are branching out and making themselves more of an attractive business. They're showing the world that, hey, this is not a passing fad. We're serious about this. And they're teaming up with AMD to cloud computing infrastructure, and they're going to in a partnership, like I said, they're going to do the blockchain aspects of it. So there's people, these groups, I'm just saying groups for lack of a better definition for a consensus, are showing the world that, hey, blockchain can be applied to a lot of different things to make things better. Not everything, but a lot of things to make things better. And with AMD to do cloud computing, I've not heard the article. I'm not understanding exactly how it'll make it better, but it's interesting that they said they're going to create so-called web cloud, and they spell web W3B as in web 3.0. So they're pushing forward with this web 3.0 blockchain, and they're making these blockchain groups are making themselves more relative.
Yeah, but it's good for PR work, I guess, if you're on their team. So, all right, we'll move on to the next article. This one is from sciencemag.org. Will the world embrace Plan S, the radical proposal to mandate open access to science papers? How far will Plan S spread? Since the September 2018 launch of the Europe-backed program to mandate immediate open access to scientific literature, 16 funders in 13 countries have signed on. That's still far shy of Plan S's ambition to convince the world's major research funders to require immediate open access, OA, to all published papers stemming from their grants. Whether it will reach that goal depends in part on details that remain to be settled, including a cap on the author changes that funders will pay for open access publication. But the plan has gained momentum. In December 2018, China stunned many by expressing strong support for Plan S. This month, National Funding Agency in Africa is expected to join possibly followed by a second U.S. funder. Others, others around the world are considering whether to sign on. Plan S, scheduled to take effect on the 1st, January 2020, has drawn support from many scientists who welcome a shakeup of a publishing system that can generate large profits while keeping taxpayer funded research results behind paywalls. But publishers, excuse me, but publishers, including AAAS, which publishes science, are concerned that are concerned, and some scientists worry that Plan S could restrict their choices. If Plan S fails to grow, it could remain a divisive mandate that applies to only a small percentage of the world's scientific papers. Delta Think, a consulting company in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, estimates that the first 15 funders to back Plan S account for around 3.5% of global research articles in 2017. To transform publishing, the plan needs a global buy-in. The more funders join, the more articles will be published in open access journals that comply with its requirements, pushing publishers to flip their journals from paywall protected subscriptions to open access, says librarian Jeffrey Mackey Mason, a chief digital scholarship officer at the University of California, Berkeley. What do you think about this, Lino?
It's good. It's like open source, but for science. You went over a sentence that said sometimes people have to pay for stuff, but with this, I'm saying open science. I'm equating it to open source because that's what I think about it. People can. You're going to see a lot more innovation. Those that want to read these scientific papers because they can be a drug. So the people that are going to be reading these things are people that's going to have an interest in those fields in the first place. I believe you'll see a lot more innovation, a lot more invention, a lot more. I'm trying to put this, just better overall science research, science improvement. That's what I'm trying to get at.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Is that me?
No. I was just trying to get off the page. Once you have transparency in these areas, because a lot of these institutions that use open source, like you were mentioning, would actually want something similar for these research papers, and not having the two in parallel actually hinders the whole entire development process. Because it's okay for you to go download different versions of Linux and use different versions of software from the GitHub and utilize blockchain and utilize these open source DApps and whatnot. But when it comes to the research papers, oh no, you can't see that. No, that doesn't. No, that's you're hindering everything else. Because imagine if they did that to open source, it wouldn't be open source then.
Right. And think about this. You mentioned the DApps and everything. So you have different countries that are trying to catch up. They know that these technologies exist, but they just don't know how to go about building these technologies and so forth. And time again, you hear from these countries that are hungry, whose people are basically spending day and night researching and reading about what they're interested in and coming up with these machinery that we've shown on our channel made out of garbage, machines made out of garbage, and they work. And imagine if they had access to these papers and they came together in a group with not Pacific papers, but the papers that they need to advance their inventions. Imagine what can be done.
Mm-hmm.
Just like the gentleman in Haiti, he built a robot because he saw that his son. I forgot when we went over this, but I think it was a week or two ago, but he saw that his son wasn't speaking, and he built a robot so his son can interact with this robot to help him start to speed to catch up with his peers. And he mentioned his plan is to go to schooling in Canada, Europe for robotics. Imagine if he and other people in Haiti that love tinker and use their hand to build things had access to these type of papers, albeit how Haiti would have to sign on to to this. But imagine what they can do. He may not. He may say, "Well, I have the information right here at my fingertips, so therefore I don't need or want to go to school in these other countries." And because that's brain drain. So if you go there, there's a high chance. I what the probability of him coming back or staying there is. But what if he don't come back? That's a brain drain.
Hmm. Intellectual flight.
Yes.
All right, we'll jump to the next article. This one is from GeekWire.com. What did the mice say? Deep Squeak uses AI to translate ultrasonic vocalizations. Researchers at the University of Washington School of Medicine have developed a software program that enlists artificial intelligence to decipher the ultrasonic vocalization made by mice and rats. The Deep Squeak program, described today in a study published by the Journal of Neuropsycho Neuropsychopharmacology, focuses on squeaks and whistles that are well above the range of human hearing. Software converts the audio signals into visual graphs or sonograms, and then puts those images through the kinds of machine vision algorithms that are used for autonomous vehicles. Deep Squeak uses biomimetic algorithms that learn to isolate vocalizations by being given labeled examples of vocalizations in noise. Russell Marks, one of the study's authors, explained in the news release. Marks created the program along with fellow University of Washington researcher Kevin Coffey, who specializes in studying the psychological effects of drugs. Marks and Coffey work in Professor John Neumeyer's lab at University of Washington Medicine, which uses rodents to investigate behaviors related to stress and addiction. The three authors that report the three authors report that these squeak work better than other automated programs or unassisted audio analysis when it comes to reducing the false positives and cutting down the time required for analysis. D-Squeak is designed to help researchers figure out what rodents are saying during drug experiments, and the work is already yielding insights. The animals have rich repertoire of calls, around 20 kinds, Coffee said. With drugs of abuse, you see both positive and negative calls. Based on the vocalizations, the rodents seem happiest when they are anticipating a reward, such as a sugar or playing with their peers, Coffee said. When two male mice get together, they make the same calls over and over. And when male mice sense a female mouse nearby, they utter the ultrasonic equivalents of wolf whistles. The whistles get more complex when the males can smell but not see the females, which suggests that male mice have distinct songs for different stages of courtship. But this isn't just about mice. Neumeier, a professor of psychiatry and behavioral sciences, who is associate director of University of Washington's Alcohol and Drug Abuse Institute, says the goal is to help human patients get through their withdrawal from alcohol and opioids. Quote, if scientists can understand better how drugs can change brain activity to cause pleasure or unpleasant feelings, we can devise better treatments for addiction. Interesting. What do you think about this, Preem?
Um, I think it's pretty cool, man. I think it's pretty cool. I'm not I'm not understanding how they do what they're doing. Um, but it's pretty cool, man. It's pretty cool. I guess they're able to put to actually create words or to create speech from like pulses in their brains or something.
Um, based on the based on the drugs that were given to him, they can monitor the squeaks and the whistle and the not the whistles, but the patterns, the squeak patterns through
Hmm.
AI.
And then they'll translate that into speech.
Yeah, they could translate it into behavior. So behavior into speech. It's pathology.
So it's kind of like, well, it's kind of like if you heard a dog whimpering, you know the dog is
Hurt.
in pain or hurt or something like that.
Correct. But with a mouse, you can't hear it because the squeaks are above human hearing. So they use the machine to collect that sort of data. They can parse out the difference between mouse squeaks versus other non rodent.
Okay, and I mean I didn't go too deep into this because I
Mm-hmm.
wasn't getting it just from the very beginning. So I was just like, let me just just give this a quick little whiff. But
Mm-hmm.
um, how are they going to try to apply this to humans in some way, or what's they're testing it on mice for some other application?
Drugs. So they're running experiments on drugs, how certain opioids and things affect how the mouse responds, and then how the mouse responds to sugar and other treats, and including other female mice. So they notice that the same patterns of behavior that humans have, a man has when he sees a woman, mice have the same exact pattern when they see a female mouse.
Hmm.
It's pretty
That you
interesting.
laughing, Lionel?
Yeah, yeah. In my mind, man. Yeah, what you said supreme, depending on how these mice, because they test a lot of drugs on mice before they test on humans.
Hmm.
And like you said, the speaks, we can't hear it, so they have this algorithm to collect it and let us know about the behavior, but the pathology of it, of the mice. And depending on how they react to the drugs, if they say, "Oh, this hurt," blah blah blah. But if their body language says that, then we'll know, okay, this may hurt humans. But if the mice say, "Oh man, it made me feel better," then we'll know, okay, this will help humans feel better.
With the fact that a mouse reacts the same way to a female mouse that a man reacts to a woman is that's I mean that's some of the best scientific research I've ever seen before, or at least I've ever read about before. I've never heard of something like that before.
I'll admit that's pretty amazing for mice to say, "Oh man, look at that mouse over there."
Well, they don't even
Like
have to, but they don't even have to see the mouse, right? They can
smell it.
smell.
Hmm. That's another can of worms, but yeah, yeah,
I mean,
it's pretty fun.
if mice could talk, you probably have like a hashtag Me Too going on or something like that.
Keep them away from me.
Yeah, toxic masculinity or some shit like that.
Toxic mice masculinity.
All right, let me go to the next one. This next one is from fastcompany.com. Artificial intelligence can detect Alzheimer's in brain scans 6 years before diagnosis. Artificial intelligence could one day change the lives of people facing an Alzheimer's diagnosis, according to a new study by researchers at University of California, San Francisco. Quote, one of the difficulties with Alzheimer's disease is that by the time all the clinical symptoms manifest and we make a definitive diagnosis, too many neurons have died, making it essentially irreversible, said J. Ho Sun, a resident in the school's department of radiology and biomedical imaging, and the study's lead researcher in the statement. For the For the study published in radiology, Sohn and his team fed a common type of brain scans to machine learning algorithm, and it learned to diagnose early stage Alzheimer's disease about 6 years before clinical diagnosis could be made. The AI's diagnostic skills could give doctors a much needed head start on treating degenerative disease. Sohn and his team focused on PET scans that monitor glucose levels across the brain because glucose is the primary source of fuel for, excuse me for a second, because glucose is the primary source of fuel for the brain cells. Once the cells become diseased, they eventually stop using glucose, making it an important level to track. However, the changes are subtle, at least to the human eye. Quote, human radiologists are really strong at identifying tiny focal matter like a brain tumor, but we struggle at detecting more slow global changes, quote, said Song John. Song said. Given the given the strength of deep learning and its type of application, especially compared to humans, it seemed like a natural application. What do you think about this, Lino?
It's going to help a lot of people, especially knowing that population is growing. So by that metric, a lot more people are going to have Alzheimer's, which means it's a domino effect. So a lot more people with Alzheimer's, which means a lot more people have the families going to have to pay bills in terms of having people look after their loved ones, putting people in nursing homes, stuff. That type of domino effect. But bringing it back to the article, they can detect it 60 years ahead, which means they can, I'm going to go on the limb and say essentially cure you of Alzheimer's even before it hits, uh, even before it hits you. This sounds like we went over Singapore. This is this sounds like that the future of medicine. And Alzheimer's, I don't know if Alzheimer's is linked with other diseases, but what if they can cure other diseases before it my links but hits you? That's another domino effect.
Right, they can figure out other aspects as well.
Mm-hmm.
Things like a concussion can lead to early Alzheimer's as well. You see that with
Yeah.
football players. Too many hits to the head, even with a helmet on, is enough to send you into the send you into this condition because those brain cells are failing to collect the glucose needed for survival.
Right. So they can wait. I said 60.
Six.
I don't know why I said 60. 6 years. I want to correct myself. 6 years before a diagnosis. I know people were said President Reagan. They knew he was going to have Alzheimer's because his speech patterns changed, and so they detected it that way. But even sooner with brain scans, that's especially if it's I don't know if it's hereditary, if this type of thing is hereditary, but if it is, you can nip that in the bud. If you're worried about it, well, this run my family, da da da. If you're worried about it, brain scan, nip it in the bud. You don't. That's one less thing you have to worry about as you age.
Mm-hmm. And if you can, I mean, I think if I remember correctly, they had we covered an article some months ago that they were doing this to children. They can tell the way a child puts together blocks or something like that. They can tell early Alzheimer's from that. I think they had some kind of iPad app or something like that, and it basically with these block patterns, that the way the child responded to the block patterns, can determine early can determine whether or not the child would end up with either Asperger's or Alzheimer's, and Asperger's would lead to, and somehow they connected that Asperger's would lead to all or early versions of Alzheimer's.
Wow.
We covered an article that talked about that, though.
So instead of a child, imagine this: instead of a child receiving all these type of inoculations when they're born and when they turn 1 and 2 when they go to school, when a child is born and they come back for their first, second, even third doctor's visit, they can do a scan to see, hey, all right, early on, super early on, and we can erase that from this child's future.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's using artificial intelligence and machine learning. And like you was pointing out before, that in the Singapore documentary, they had determined the baby in the cradle, the breathing patterns could determine whether or not the child ends up with Alzheimer's.
Yeah, the preemies. He said preemies have 60. There's periodical breathing affects 2% of natural born babies, but 6% of premature born babies. So they can detect it with that pad. They can detect it and treat it.
Mm-hmm. All right, this next one is from sciencemag.org. Artificial intelligence turns brain activity into speech. Epilepsy patients with electrode implants have aided efforts to decipher speech.
I think this is the one I got that last one confused with. May have been. My bad.
Okay. For many people who are paralyzed and unable to speak, signals of what they like to say hide in their brains. No one has been able to decipher those signals directly. But 3 research teams recently made progress in turning data from electrodes surgically placed on the brain into computer-generated speech. Using computational models known as neural networks, they reconstructed words and sentences that were, in some cases, intelligible to human listeners. Interesting that they use the term neural networks, because that's something that you found in the Avengers when Shuri was working on Vision's
Mm-hmm.
Vision's head. None of those efforts described in the papers were in recent months on the preprint server. None of the efforts described in papers in recent months on the preprint server bioscript managed to recreate speech that people that had merely imagined. Instead, the researchers monitored parts of the brain as people either read aloud, silently mouthed speech, or listened to recordings. But showing the reconstructed speech is understandable is, quote, definitely exciting, says Stephanie Martin, a neuroengineer at the University of Geneva, Switzerland, who was not involved in the new projects. People who have lost the ability to speak after a stroke or a disease, excuse me, people who have lost the ability to speak after a stroke or disease can use their eyes or make other small movements to control a cursor or select on-screen letters. Cosmologist Stephen Hawking tense his cheek to trigger a switch mounted on his glasses. But if a brain computer interface could recreate their speech directly, they might regain much more control over tone and inflection, for example, or the ability to interject in a fast-moving conversation. Very interesting. There's actually some audio with this. For those who want to listen, the link is in the description in the docket. What do you think about this, Lionel? This is actually groundbreaking.
Yeah, it is. It is. I was going to say, well, obviously, people who can't speak, they can benefit from this. There's a number of other people who imagine them perfecting this to a point where people who are injured, who just become injured and are unable to articulate what's wrong with them because they're in shock or whatever the case may be, this on them, and it'll tell them, hey, such and such hurt, and therefore the first rescue team can do what's needed to help this person survive. Not outside of that, outside of those 2 points, the article talks about different applications this has. I'm trying to say like 7 things at once, but this is groundbreaking.
Do you need the do you need this artificial intelligence?
You know what? That's a good one. You know what? That's a good one. I give you that one. I give you that one. But turning brain activity to speech patterns is wow. It's like, wow, how do you do that? Like how do you take this and turn it into this?
Mm-hmm.
That was stuff.
I'm assuming that there's brain waves, right? That kick off that they're monitoring for, similar to how a submarine, you're a sub guy, listens to different waves underwater, different sounds being waved.
Yeah. You know what? Okay, I see where you're going with that. Like dolphins and whales, they use sonar. Uh, Translate that into the brain waves, and they may say with the mouse, well, these brain waves are synonymous with this speech pattern, and this with this speech pattern. Yeah, okay. I can see how they would do that. All right, okay. But it's still very impressive.
Supreme, do you have anything you want to answer this?
Nope.
All right. This one is from Forbes.com. Earth is drifting away from the sun, and so are all the planets. Pop-ups. On January 3rd, 2019, Earth reached the point in its orbit where it's at its closest approach to the sun, perihelion. Every object orbiting a single mass, like our sun, makes an uh, ellipse containing a point of closest approach that's unique to that particular orbit, known as a psoriasis. All these pop-ups, I just don't understand. For the past
Hey,
four,
never mind. The poppers have.
your mic broke up. For the past 4.5 billion years, Earth has orbited the sun in ellipses, just as all the other planets orbiting their stars in all other mature solar systems throughout the galaxy and the universe. But there's something you may not expect or appreciate that nevertheless occurs. Earth's orbital path doesn't remain the same over time, but spirals outward. This year, 2019, our perihelion was 1.5 centimeters farther away than it was last year, which was more distant than the year before, etc. It's not just Earth either. Every planet drifts away from its parent star. Here's the science of why. This is just a GIF of what they're describing. The force responsible for the orbits of every planet around every solar system in the universe is the same: universal law of gravitation. Sorry about that. The force responsible for the orbits of every planet around every solar system in the universe is the same: the universal law of gravitation. Whether you look at it in terms of Newton, where every mass attracts every other mass in the universe, or in terms of Einstein, where mass and energy curves the fabric of space-time through which other masses travel. The largest mass dominates the orbit of everything and influences. If the central if the central mass were unchanging and were only the factor at play, the force of gravity would remain constant over time. Every orbit would continue in a perfect collapse, a close ellipse, ellipse of in a closed ellipse forever and would never change. Um, this is interesting because I wonder what that does, for planet exploration. Like because you want to get everything right if you're sending a rocket or something like that up to to a different moon or a different planet. If you're off by even a few centimeters, that can be a disaster for your whole entire operation. What do you think? I know.
Yeah, it can. It's especially for Earth because we are in that so-called Goldilocks zone, and the
Mhm.
more we drift away, the more you'll see weather change. Whereas planets that are too close to the sun and they are in a tidal lock, one half of the planet is cold ice, and the other planet is hot, boiling hot. So as we drift away from this comfortable zone that humans are accustomed to, and this is, hundreds of thousands of years in the future, if it's, I think, still 1.2 centimeters further away than last year, then what happens at a foot, 2 feet, 3 feet further? What kind of weather patterns will we see? Will the North Pole get colder? What those things. And to your point, when you leave in Earth year before, your calculations were this, you know, and you leave in Earth or at whatever point, from one day to the next, that the Earth shifts half a centimeter or a millimeter further out and you fire off this rocket, what consequences, what compounding consequences that may have when you're trying to go somewhere else. So I'm sure they have these thoughts and they take these different thoughts and uh, they they think about these different things because for one, we wouldn't have known about this if they didn't think about these different things or if they didn't measure these different things. They take these things into account.
Hmm.
But it is interesting because I believe that can have a compounding. If you're a centimeter off, then by the time you get to your destination, there's no telling how far by the time you get there.
Right, because the location that you're trying to get to is not exactly going to be the same, especially with the gravitational pull, rotation, spin. Um, all of these other factors come into play, but the idea that you can be a few feet off by the time you get there can be, the difference between you falling down the side of a crater or something like that versus landing into a flat spot.
Right. And then your energy to get you there, your fuel. You have to use more fuel because you have to correct yourself.
Hmm. All right, let me get to this last article. This one is from RT.com. China probe lands on the dark side of the moon in space exploration breakthrough. The Chinese robotic probe Chang'e 4 has landed on the dark side of the moon, becoming the first man-made craft to alight on the unexplored surface, according to reports from the Chinese state media. The probe reportedly landed in the South Pole Aitken Basin, the oldest, largest, and deepest crater on the moon's surface. The moon's dark side remains largely unexplored because its position shields it from radio frequencies, preventing direct contact with the Earth. To solve that problem, China launched the relay satellite. I can't even pronounce that. That's hard. I wish my Chinese ambassador was here, Scholar Cheng. Earlier this year to transmit signals from the dark side. The first photo. Let's play this real quick. Quote: Science the far Since the far side of the moon is shielded from electromagnetic interference from the Earth, it's an ideal place to do research the space environment and solar bursts. And the probe can listen to the deeper reaches of the cosmos, quote said um, Tong Tongji Lu, deputy director of the Lunar Exploration and Space Program Center at China's National Space Administration. The Chinese probe has been circling the moon in an elliptical orbit in preparation for landing since Sunday. The mission left Shenzhen Shijiang Satellite Launch Center on December 8th and was reported to have reached lunar orbit 4 days later. China is a relative newcomer to the space travel compared to U.S. and Russia, but has been making up for lost time at a rapid rate. The country's last lunar rover, E122, had spent 972 days on the lunar surface by the time its mission ended in 2018 or 2016. Sorry. China plans to launch a Mars probe in 2020 to collect samples from the surface of the planet and seeks to have its own permanent space station in orbit by 2022. Meanwhile, the U.S., threatened by China's incursion into space, is planning a buildup of its military there, the Space Force, and forbids NASA from collaborating with China. Interesting. I know. What do you think about this?
Well, I guess it ain't cheese on the other side of that planet, or not planet, but moon. It's interesting. I'm sure everyone that's interested in science were curious what was on the other side. You know how it looked, if the moon dust was a different color, things of that nature. You know, there was always some type of curiosity. Like, I wonder. Now we see it's it looks like the same dust, same craters, same boring looking atmosphere, but they do make a few points that since it was shielded from the different things that bombarded, like the what do you say, electromagnetic interferences from the Earth, since that those interferences didn't reach the dark side of the moon like it did the sun side of the moon, then they can do a lot more research.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely think that this will be interesting because based on the amount of technology and effort they put into this, they're hoping to get a big return on the investment.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think there's another video that it's much of a longer video. I think that, but I think it's still as much of the same thing. Them recording, yeah, recording the landing in the rover, uh, going along.
I'm looking at the chat now because I think we're finished with the hangout. But Fatty Black asks, how do you feel about gene therapy, meaning messing around with genes to benefit the person? I don't see anything wrong with that. I think if a
Really?
person, well, I mean, it's their body, their choice. I mean, if somebody wants to
Mhm.
have a sort of child that's superhuman, like, I mean, that's that's their business. I mean, what the they should be on the hook for the for the fallout though.
I don't know. I like the old fashioned human, you know, way of doing things.
Hmm.
Uh,
There's some feedback
he
coming
is.
from you.
Oh, really? Oh man, what's wrong with this feedback? All right. How about now? A little bit less, more.
I don't hear anything now.
Oh. Well, he is right in terms of the sun getting bigger too, as it goes to a red dwarf and, and things like that. It's gonna get fatter and the sun will get bigger and bigger and start to swallow up Mercury and Venus, and Earth is gonna be as close to the sun as Mercury is now. But by that time, hopefully, we didn't left this rock and went somewhere else, Alpha Centauri or Sirius B, and made our living somewhere.
Hmm.
But he's right. He is right. Right, sir.
Yeah, Don Dada in the chat says in order for China to accomplish their goals by 2049, they will have to have, I guess that's what he's trying to say, a place to grow with their current population. And civilians moving from the countryside, it will be hard to sustain themselves. Not necessarily. Not necessarily. A lot of their research that's being done. I mean, if you look at a lot of their cities, um, outside of Shanghai, outside of Beijing, those places are fully developed, and they're light years ahead of the United States. In fact, they're number one in artificial intelligence. Uh, they're getting close to being number one in space exploration and research. Um, rocketry as well. They have some pretty good rockets that they developed. You see a lot of North Korea. A lot of North Koreans actually go to school in China and then go back to North Korea for STEM. Um, so they have an ability to leapfrog the United States because the United States hasn't invested into its people at all. In fact, it spends more money putting people in jail than it does in spending it on education. That's the European way of doing business. What's going on, Richard Dixon? Yeah, Fatty Black also says it can be used to remove defects too. I assume he's talking about birth defects. Yeah, that's true. It can. Some people consider height a defect, so they want to be taller. So I don't know if that
Wow.
I don't know if that can always help.
Height of defect.
Hmm. Yeah. There's a whole lot of things we did this weekend, man. For those of you who are new to the Hangout, you should definitely check our archives. We have um, we had a hangout on Saturday, which is Black Tech Talk, Black IT Talk, talking about mobile app development, um, dumb phones, feature phones, and smartphones, turnkey smartphones. The ability to build your own smartphone and uh, Africanize, if that makes any sense, the smartphone and create this new sort of a digital agrarian culture for for coding.
Hmm. You know what? Humans are going to move with this technology. You know how movies come out, like futuristic movies come out that's decades into the future, and humans go from being stuck to, well, not stuck, tied to a desktop to being mobile, constantly mobile, and the desktop has less of a foothold in those movies, and humans are going to move to that. Cell phones are going to get better. Obviously, laptops have gotten better, thinner, faster compared to yesteryears, but they're just going to continue to become faster, and you're going to have new technology coming on. Just 100 years ago, we were fresh out of uh, horse and buggy. Another 100 years was how it would be. So that's the natural order. Humans and technology is going to be more and more mobile. And I say it to say you're seeing that with Africa now, um, how they're doing a lot of things from their phone. When should I plant these crops? When should I plant this? And they dial *39#. Gets, and it's okay. Well, not today, tomorrow. That's mobile. Now you don't have to you open a browser to go to weather.com. I know you have the weather app on your phone, but wow, we're becoming more and more mobile. We're bringing the technology with us instead of going to the technology.
And you're cultivating a transformation based on the needs of the environment, not trying to shove down their throat, American values, right? You're kind of building up. You're doing this digital transformation based on the needs of the people and not based on what is trendy. They don't like we were talking about Saturday. We don't need Africans don't need, Latin Americans don't need um, shiny white half-eaten apples on the back of their phone as a logo. They need something that's indigenous to their environment.
Mm-hmm.
The lack of electricity in certain villages and whatnot requires that your phone has to stay on at least 24 hours so you can actually make calls and receive texts and send texts and things of that nature. Uh,
Right. There's a emphasis on the necessities. You know, they want the bare necessities, but they want those necessities to last longer instead of give me the necessities, but also more of the creature comforts. It's the other way around there. When I say creature comforts, I mean apps. Instagram and Snapchat. Well, all that. It's the other way around there.
Yeah, and that's where Black people come in, like the Black Avenger and all these other Black social media platforms that are trying to get off the ground. That's where you push your platform into that area, and you push the Facebooks out. You push the the YouTubes and everything out. Now you have a market. Because remember that went over the article. There's 800 million people that need to be brought on to some form of feature phone or smartphone in Africa. Like there's 800 new subscribers that need to be signed up. So there's a necessity to drive this new digital transformation. So just because a person has a dumb phone doesn't mean that they want an iPhone. I mean, they probably would, but the reality is, even in America, you see a lot of people with iPhones and the screen's either cracked or it needs a charge or a combination of the two.
Yes, yes, I wholeheartedly agree with that one. Even with screen protectors, they're correct. So yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
But,
You were gonna say something?
no, I'll read the chat.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. How do you bring text-based applications to dumb phones? Phones that only have a numerical pad and a 240 by 320 pixel screen. How do you utilize the text functionality to bring applications to it?
But then again, if we're basing functionality over fashion, the phones that are based on functionality may have different software in terms of, hey, I need this phone for this, and you provide and you upgrade those phones on the same level as the whatever current phones are in the market at that time of power, but you may be able to do more um, comparative to the fashion phone. Function phone may be different than the fashion phone.
Yeah, a function phone has its use, right? The whole purpose of it is to do all the basic necessities and have one additional feature, right? So
Mm-hmm.
the ability to get on social media or to pull out a QR code and use that QR code to pay for goods, or to um, authenticate something. If I need to unlock a door or get into, let's say, an ATM pops up with a QR code, and I have to pull up my phone to authenticate, then that's the way I authenticate. Use it for multi-factor authentication.
Yeah, yeah. But that Singapore video, oh man, that's that shows you what you need to do. They saw. I'm just call it a city instead of trying to use 3 4 words to describe it. They saw their city as 50 years ago, 40 years ago, as okay, we we need to do something because we foresee at that time. I'm pretty sure they thought we foresee in the future that new technologies will be here, and at that time, computers were just really getting to proliferate to different governments. So they probably said, well, this new thing's computer, America's computer is the size of a room. Let's these new technologies are coming out. Cars are getting better. We need to future-proof our city, build it up, these buildings as they went along, in like 5 10 year increments. They may regroup and say, okay, let's where we're going is fine. Let's just make a little fort. And they kept doing that and kept doing it. And now look what you see now. It looks beautiful. These aerial drone views of Singapore. You just see nicely placed buildings because of what they did in terms of the breeze. But you see rooftops with grass, terraces, trees. You see greenery everywhere. They interwoven the nature with the human ability to build and be technologically advanced. So it's no long, it's no this sterile city, this Blade Runner looking city. Beautiful. It looks like a big hobbit uh, uh, village.
Hmm. Hmm.
Fetty Black says he want to be on the future of lives.
He could drop his email in the chat. We can bring him on tonight, or we'll put him on the list.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Where you at, Preem?
Preem's gone.
Oh, my bad. My bad.
He's been gone for a while now. Yeah, I think quite a few of these articles that we're covering is actually pointing us in the right direction. Although we've been going in, we probably thought we were going in the right direction, but we didn't really know what 2019 was going to bring. But we're going into a new, more complex direction that wasn't thought out before. When we started doing these hangouts, it was just to read a few articles there, get give our analysis. But now you're starting to see, the tea leaves. You're starting to see.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of feedback coming from you, I know. We're starting to see more markets open up. Now we're seeing articles, we're seeing videos about Latin America and Africa actually being viable places for emerging markets, and not just so much about the capitalist aspect of making money, but utilizing your skill set in a place where it's actually going to be well received and for the recipients on the ground.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah.
hmm But if nobody else has anything to add, actually, I think I have one more article.
Mm-hmm.
Let me pull this up. Mm. Yeah, I already deleted the article, so it's gone now. But I think it might be on the docket for Saturday's IoT hangout. So let me bring one of our new signups, Fatty Black, on. Give him a few seconds to come on.
Yeah, nice email. Oh, found out something interesting. When they show like a visual of what space is, and they always show this like elliptical globe looking uh, example of what space is. I learned that that is the visual space where we can see. What's outside of those borders doesn't necessarily mean that's the edge of space. It only means that the light coming from those areas have not had time to reach us yet. So after big tens of billions of years, that light outside the observable space that we see have not had time to reach us yet. That is huge.
So you're talking about light years.
Right. Because like when they show, okay, like on these videos, they say, oh well, this is space. They hold up this visual model. And it's always this elliptical globe looking thing, and it got these green spots and stuff. And you would think, well, the edge is the edge of space. Nah, that don't mean that. It just means what's on the outside of that has a head. The light that has a head time to reach Earth and tele. So space is astronomically huge.
No pun intended.
No pun intended at all. Wow. I mean, you can't even wrap your mind around that. It's like, wow. By the time I make it back home, everybody I know is going to be dead. Their children, their children, children. Your whole bloodline may cease to exist because, you know, whatever the cases may be. By the time if you at that point, by the time you reach Earth, everything's gone. That's huge. So you're gonna be late, buddy.
Yeah, I think that's why they're modifying humans so that they can live longer and things like that. Be 150 years old and so on and so forth. You're going to need to send, um, very you have to send teenagers, 13, 14, 15 years old, 16 years old, and into space. You have to get them started early. They won't even have to go to grade school, right? They will just have to go through a series of trainings and be ready for space flight.
Mm-hmm. Man. But that leaves a lot of space to get away from people. Mm-hmm. Just,
Hmm.
just go over here, man. Gotta get away from some people. I don't know. I think humans in the future are going to be interesting. 'Cause I still believe, the human nature thing, other planets, and saying, hey, you know, hey, this planet is only for these type of people, or that type of stuff. We own this planet. So
Hmm.
that it's going to be interesting. That's why I like futuristic type movies. Hey, we had 20 people watching.
Oh, really? Where were you people at, an hour and a half ago?
Right, you know what I'm saying? Just listen to us. Little creeps. No, I'm messing with you. I'm messing with you. Nate, in the future, kids won't learn. They'll just assimilate information from the web. I can see that. Like a download type of deal.
Well, they with all these electrodes being put in people's brains and able to disseminate information and stuff like that, you just do a data dump to a child.
Hmm. And that'll be cool. I'm pretty sure in the beginning it won't be cool, but when it's perfected, it'll be cool.
Hmm.
Yeah, just like 10 years. I mean, like at the end of this year was what come up, because it seems like the articles that we go over, it seems like something after another is coming out. You get this Uber for trucking. It seems like something is coming out. Even with that documentary we did, we discussed Saturday about Africa. It seems like everybody's doing something. You know, so even after this year, the amount of new things that are going to be out there we discover. That the brain trust discover for ourselves.
Yeah, of course they're going to streamline the process. I mean, you see it now, right? You see not so much as toddlers, but you do see your mid 4 year olds to 5 year olds pick up an iPad and just work it in a matter of minutes. They know how to get to YouTube. They know to go look at the stupid videos and stuff like that.
Hmm. I even heard where kids glass, like just windows, are interactive. They just go up and just start touching the windows because they think it's just interactive.
Hmm.
You know,
What you mean
wow.
on a tablet?
Well, on the tablet, the smartphone is glass, so they touch it and interact. But they'll go to like these windows at these wide windows at these like say banks or commercial property, touch the windows because they think the windows are interactive.
Oh, okay. I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
They're going
Now,
for the rudimentary of sight and touch.
right, right. They think they can touch it and something pops up on the window. Oh, slide left to open. You know, So we're at that point now.
Hmm. And plus, you
Huh?
remember the movie Aliens Covenant? Is that what it was? The last one that came out,
Yeah, yeah,
where they had those people in those capsules and they just slept until the next destination.
yeah.
There you go right there.
True, true. Just like the one with the guy that playing Guardians of the Galaxy from Lawrence. You know, where he woke up like 45 years too early, and he woke her up too. They they was doing the same thing in there, and they were preserving trees and stuff from Earth to bring with them. What's going on?
Who is that you referring to?
No, somebody just joined the live stream.
Who is this?
My bad. I had to get my mic set up. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. What's going on, brother?
Yeah, what's going
This
on?
is Fatty Black from the chat. I went to my new account that I
Okay.
made for stuff like for discussions like this. The other one is like my stuff for my hobbies like gaming, fashion, and shit like that. So
Okay. What's going on, brother?
nothing. I
How'd
was
you hear about
actually
that?
I was recommended by like to about you guys by Richard Dixon.
Okay. Okay.
Because
Shout out to
me and him, I don't know if you're aware of the organization that me and him are a part of, but he's a part of or an organization called the BAIO, which stands for Black African Infrastructure Organization.
Okay.
So pretty much the organization is the ideology in short is trying to establish a nation state for people in the diaspora, but on the continent, and eventually being our own independent nation, and then helping out neighboring countries to then restore our continent back to glory. That was a little extra in the end, but yeah. So he recommended it because I'm actually a IT technician myself. So he was telling everybody that was in the last live stream that somebody else did to like check out that channel, check out your guys' channel. So.
Okay. 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 That's cool. Some of the stuff that we do on here, I don't know how much you caught about it, but we focus on space technology on Mondays, and then on Wednesdays we focus on geopolitics, especially in reference to Africa and Latin America,
Mm.
and we focus on economics. So we focus a lot on fintech, cryptocurrencies, and other forms of the dollar and other current and other markets as well. And then on Saturdays we do have our Black Tech Talk. So we do a lot of space technology on Mondays, but we focus on one abstract idea on Saturdays. So last Saturday we went over mobile OS and app development in Africa and Latin America. And we provide a lot of evidence. So if you look at the docket, you'll see that we're not just making up any of this stuff from off the top of our head. We started this platform because we wanted to get away from all of the madness inside Black YouTube. So really focus on the things that actually are going to matter in the fourth industrial revolution.
Just like us. We just for our org, like it's not too like you guys are very specific with one particular thing that's necessary for us, but like for us, like we mainly mainly zero in on just like establishing a nation, because a lot of people don't talk about it for some odd reason. They'll bring up like Liberia, for example, as if that's like an example of us not having a nation of our own, even though Liberia lasted for like 150 plus years.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it was probably the most developed country at the time as well. So, But yeah, we pretty much just zero in on mainly we zero in on just like the nationhood part, but then we like bring everything and get together like the economics part, architecture, agriculture, technology. So we pretty much zero everything back. We center everything back into nationhood.
Hmm.
So that's funny. Because a lot of people honestly like this, they take this shit as entertainment at this point when it comes to our liberation. So it's like I can see why you guys want to get away from that because it's fucking annoying, you know.
Absolutely, absolutely. Because it's you can't have innovation unless you're having complex thought. I know myself discussed this since the establishment of this channel. It's really
Mhm.
Lionel's incubator, but we all kind of created this sort of intellectual co-op for
Yeah,
brothers, for Black people, um, and now we're trying to really go from what other people are doing in terms of technology, because what's happening right now is there's a nationalist agenda for everybody. We've talked about this many times on the Hangouts in 2018, but China is ramping up on their technology base.
oh yeah,
Um,
China has like I think the most engineers on the planet, if
yeah,
I'm not mistaken.
they graduate 1.5 million per year.
Yeah,
Um, Russia is ramping up. Putin put out a declaration. We covered this. He said that whoever controls AI controls the world, and he's putting billions of rubles into his millennials to make sure that they keep pace with the development of artificial intelligence. Uh,
yeah,
we covered several articles from the World Economic Forum last year that discussed a number of countries that have made initiatives to focus on data science, cybersecurity, um, artificial intelligence, machine learning, uh, the ability to understand a second language outside of just English, but learning things like Python and um, Go and Ruby and things like that. Those things are essential. And when you come back to Black America and you look at what's going on, um, you see how far behind the curve they are. And now we covered an article, a video on Saturday night, and we're seeing all these tech startups, about hundreds in Africa, popping up all over the place. And when you come back to Black America, you're like, well, what's going on?
yeah. Because most people in I would say like outside of the continent, like us, I'll focus on us specifically. Like we like to shun like STEM professions. Most of our parents, I would say, like I'm 23, so even like with my mom and my dad being in their 50s, like their parents didn't like really I guess lack of a better term, not even lack of a better term, they didn't invest into their dreams or their dream profession, or at the time they thought that that was impossible for them to even like achieve, you know.
Hmm.
But for me, it was a little different because it's like, well, obviously times has changed since then, since they was kids themselves. So like for my, I guess my mom and my dad is different compared to other parents. Like they actually invested into all of my dream jobs. Like when I was a kid, I actually wanted to be a marine biologist. So he actually was like invested in that, buying me like fucking sharks and shit, like toy sharks and toy sea creatures and stuff like that. Because that's what I wanted to be. But as I got older, especially with my hobby of gaming, they drove me to be a technician.
Hmm.
So they actually started investing into that. So it's like I don't know, like a lot of like I'm noticing too, like a lot of black parents here, like they don't really talk to their children about what they want to do as well. It's kind of like they just send their kids off to school and then just expect them to just get a job when they're of age, you know? There's never that conversation like, hey, what exactly do you want to do in life? Like what do you like? What do you want to do?
Hmm.
So
Now you say you work in IT. What is it that you do in IT?
right now I'm doing help desk
Okay.
for a company called WNET.
Yeah, don't
Um
mention the company. Don't mention the company.
oh, okay. Well, it's too late now, but yeah, it's a popular company here in New York City.
Okay.
So,
You have your A plus.
oh yes, I have my A plus and my Net plus certification. I actually am slacking, and I'm planning on getting my Security plus, and I'm slacking on that. I don't know what it is. I just don't want to read the book right now.
Yeah, get your server plus if you can. Get your cloud plus.
So actually, that's actually it's funny that you brought that. I actually want to be in cloud computing. That's
Yeah,
my goal. Actually, is to be in that.
yeah. You want to
Uh,
get your cloud plus. You want to get your server plus. Those are two certifications that's going to matter. A lot of companies um, won't allow you to touch their stack unless you are certified in that area. So I know when I used to work for HP in the past, they won't let you touch their server environment or go into their data center unless you was server plus. So
okay.
same thing
Cause
with
I was remember I was talking to my old coworker. He was saying how cause I don't know if you heard about the school Perscolas at all.
say that one more time.
I don't know if you heard of the IT training school called Perscolas.
I've never heard of that.
But they're pretty. They have a number of schools around the nation. But one of my old classmates, he was talking because they have alumni courses, right? So when we graduated, the Linux Plus was a alumni course that they was having for us to take. And one of my coworkers slash classmates at the time too, for some odd reason, he felt that he needed to get a Linux Plus certification in order to do cloud or anything cloud related, since they use Terminal for
99,
AWS.
yeah, 99% of cloud runs on Linux or some form of command line.
Yeah, so but I was telling him, I'm like, you don't need to know Linux itself. You mainly just need to understand the terminal.
No, not necessarily. You still need to know Linux because AWS has its own version of Linux that it runs on. So if
Hmm.
you want to spin up containers and you want to spin up services, you're going to have to understand Linux. You're going to have to have some kind of background of Linux of the command line.
So would you even say it's worth even getting that cert?
You don't need to have the Linux Plus, but you need to have
Just have knowledge on it.
you need to have the ability to perform
Okay.
Linux functionality.
Well, okay, that kind of that worked out in itself because we ended up taking a Python course anyways, and she had us using Ubuntu, so
Yeah, a lot of
yeah, we had to get used to Python and Ubuntu at the same time. So
companies that would have, if they don't use Red Hat, they use Ubuntu. Or very rarely do you see them use CentOS because they need support, and they can't always rely on their human staff for that. So if you are a Fortune 500 company and using Linux, you're going to be using Red Hat, so because you want the customer support and services. Um, in that regard, you don't use CentOS unless you're just using it for testing purposes. But for any version of cloud outside of Microsoft. Even Microsoft has certification for Linux on Azure. Um, everybody's pretty much using Linux in the cloud space. So
okay, but for us though, like in the organization, like we mainly what I plan on doing on this channel on my personal channel right that I'm using right now is to like pretty much zero in technology towards nature. Like I remember one conversation we had was about because you talk about cryptocurrency and stuff, right? I personally feel that in our nation state that'll come to be in the future that it should just be straight digital, backed by the natural resources.
okay,
Because essentially, that's what pretty much but not even essentially, that's what we do now, unless you're getting a check. If you have a bank account, all your money is digital. And you're just able to get a physical form of that digital money, which is the dollar.
our subject matter expert on this is actually Lionel. Lionel is a certified, well, soon to be certified blockchain and cryptocurrency expert. So
Okay, I actually have a blockchain book because I got a big book bundle.
mhm.
I don't know. I'll probably read that.
I know you have anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, what book do you have?
Give me 1 second. I'll let you know.
Well,
Checking my folder.
While he's looking for that, I want to get to the chat. Nate asks to the chat, how far away are we from robotics taking over skilled trade positions like plumbers and electricians? We covered an article and video on that. I know. I think a few months ago about a robot. Actually, I think it was last month. A robot was actually doing bricklaying.
Oh yeah. I remember that.
It was doing bricklaying. It did it in 1/4 of the time that the human would actually do it.
Right. It was more precise, and it can work longer hours through lunch breaks and smoke breaks and stuff.
Yeah, and then we also covered an article that had a robot. I want to say it was either China or Russia laying down pipe. No pun intended. It was a robot laying down pipe, and it was actually doing it precisely. I think that's what helped build the Turkish pipeline from Russia to Turkey.
Mm.
Okay, I found the book. It's called Hands-On Cybersecurity with Blockchain, because it was a big cybersecurity pack that I got.
You said hands-on what?
Cybersecurity with blockchain.
Okay.
So I have no clue about that until I read that book.
Now,
who makes that book?
It's published by the company Pact, and the author.
Oh yeah. I'm familiar with Pact Publishing.
Yeah, and the author is Rajneesh, I think Gupta.
Yeah, Senji.
Yeah.
Now there's a documentary I can send to you. I think it's on DW documentary. It's called the Cashless Society, and they talking about Switzerland. Oh, got your email. I'll email it to you. Okay. I don't know if I sent that through the trust email. I can't remember, but it was talking about cashless society and how I think it was Switzerland. They're on their way to a cashless society.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. Like pretty much like now, like honestly, physical currencies like is pointless. I personally wanted to kind of like go into like like when you see in like video games or like futuristic movies where they go by quote unquote credits, because it's more convenient.
It's not that it's useless. If you ever get hit, by a cybersecurity attack and you're offline, you won't have any way of spending your money or having access to it. We've seen incidents in recent time of people having their digital wallets stolen from them. So things like that happen.
Yeah, that is true. But I don't know. Like I think like more people are starting to like implement card usage in their stores, because there's been some stores I'm like, why do you guys don't have like the ability for me to use my card? Like you only take cash. Like,
so now you're talking about business continuity, and that's more of a it's more of a professional services area of concern, right? So you're thinking about business continuity. How do you keep a nation state online regardless of a situation, whether it's a natural disaster or it's a digital cyber attack? We saw it in 2008 when Russia went to war with Georgia. They shut the whole entire country down in less than a few minutes, and had their tanks crossing into their capital within a few hours because they had no way of them responding. They couldn't make a phone call, couldn't broadcast on TV, couldn't put anything on the radio, couldn't make any cell phone calls, no Twitter, no Facebook, no nothing. Couldn't call the United States for help.
Yeah, I remember that. That was like quite some time ago, right?
Excuse me?
I said that was quite some time ago, right, when that happened? Like about a decade ago? Yeah.
2008. Yeah, absolutely. But those are the things that the continent is going to need help in procuring those sort of human resources and those sort of skill sets and those sort of um, digital transformations that are going to have to take place. And guys like us, the BAIO, the
Yeah.
Black Brain Trust, we focus on these areas, right? But you go through many YouTube platforms and they're not having this discussion at all. So,
At all. It's like it's like if you mention the word nation, I was like nationhood. Like you know what I cringe at the most is when people say we're trying to build a nation, these talking heads.
mhm.
But they're not talking about the same nation that we're talking about. They're talking about like really just creating black families and having economic power, quote unquote. And that's it. That's what they think is nation building in their head. But they completely forget that you're living you're living within enemy lines, like you're behind enemy lines trying to do this. And then what kills me is when they bring up examples, right? Like they bring up people of different nationalities and like races with different nationalities with them, like Chinese or like Arabs and stuff like that. And it's like you're forgetting like there wouldn't be a Chinatown without a China, you know? So, because the only reason why there is a Chinatown, because that host nation is able to support them and vice versa. We don't have anybody to do that with, you know?
Because there's a social gap because of American history, right? But
Yeah.
and plus they have a language. They have a common language, Mandarin or Cantonese.
Yeah.
Whereas in America, the language is actually beat out of you, right? So you have to figure out a way to find a common ground, with the continent for that matter. And unfortunately,
but the thing is, they're not even totally in the state to like really even do that because like the people that immigrate from those countries don't necessarily do that onto the extent as China or other countries.
I thought you guys had Little Africa up in Harlem.
When
I was under that impression.
Well, back then I think there was a part called Little Africa, and I think that got demolished because that was just the people, like the ex-slaves calling it that. It wasn't necessarily the continent banding together to create that little town. But I honestly, well, now you could say that too. Like you could say it's pretty much Little Africa because most of the black people that live there now, are actually from the continent.
So yeah, but so your job, from here on out, is to go and campaign for a little Ubuntu stand in Harlem.
But then, who's protecting that?
You and the BAIO.
With what nation?
Well, before you rely on the nation, you put on your uniforms and identify each other. I'm saying it has to start on the ground first, and then you can go back to a nation. Because Africa as a continent, right, is not even unified in itself. Outside of the political institution of the African Union, they themselves don't even 100% agree with each other. Because if that was the case, you wouldn't have had Gaddafi get overthrown and have Nigeria actually vote in favor of something like that.
Well, with that's what the BIO is. It's pretty much identifying those people. That's why we like, as you can see with my logo, right? It says BIO New York. So it's like it's because we have state chapters within the organization. So it's like he's a BIO member, yes, but he's from this particular part of the BIO, like that particular state.
Okay.
So honestly, is what we're trying to figure out now, kinda, because we're not really too like concerned. Like we're all concerned, but we're just trying to get the land first, honestly. But we're trying to see like how many black people want a nation of their own. Because it seemed like a lot of black people don't want that when you talk about it.
They're Americanized.
Like it's weird. Like it's like that's what I was talking about earlier. It's like the ideas on nation building is just a black family and economic power, but you don't have anything to back you. If America wanted to get like as they done in the past, if they want to get rid of your fucking town, they can easily do it. Because you don't have somebody to back you. So that's what we're saying. Like, and that's another thing too. Like, a lot of people think that when we mention nation, they think that we're trying to do like some reverse transatlantic slave trade or some shit. Like, we're trying to bring a whole mass exodus of every black person here to that nation state. And it's like, no, everybody doesn't have to go, but they can support the idea of it. Just like every Chinese person that live here doesn't fucking go to China. They don't move to China. They stay here, but they support that nation as well. Every chance that they get.
Well, we'll see how long that lasts for with all this political climate that we're having right now.
So,
yeah, it's 10:45 or past 10:45 now, and I don't see anything else in the chat. And I think what we'll do is we'll shut it down.
Yeah.
And we'll keep you on for the after hour, and everybody else. We'll see you on Wednesday for Geopolitics episode 123.
All right.
I know you have any closing thoughts.
No, have a good one.
All right.
Everybody have a good night.
Stay on.